My name's Richard Skidmore. I'm a product and innovation leader. I currently have a consultancy where I work with a number of different startups, and I have a background leading global projects for Warner Music and EMI, among others, before I went into the startup space. I have a sort of a background in data and innovation, so I'm looking at building products that use machine learning to fix some of the issues within the business. So in my last role, I built products that were an e-commerce platform that were allowing people who make YouTube clips, those sort of creators to have a bed of music. And then I also had like a sort of a Spotify for Business product. So I work at that sort of intersection of sort of technology and data, and I'm trying to sort of, my big goal is like many, to get the rights holders paid properly. But also make it easier for sort of the next generation of music fans coming through to actually consume music and actually, use music. And I think using music is really, really hard because the music industry is set up in a very antiquated way. And so, if you are a 17-year-old content creator now, you just want to go and get a track and you want to use that on YouTube. You don't want to understand what licensing is, why I can't get it, why I can't use it straight away. So yeah, that's my big focus, and I work with a number of sort of large companies, small companies, startups, trying to help them on that path to and miss the bumps in the road. I think there's a lot in the startup space at the moment. There's a lot of issues. We've been talking about this while we've been here at Wallifornia, of raising capital and sort of maybe the lack of investors out there. What an investor wants, their return of investment that quickly. There is always a trade-off, I think, between tech and the tech company and the investor. And I think, building anything new is hard, number one. And number two, it does take time. And number three, you make mistakes. So when I was, at one point, I ran a sort of a global project with blockchain in 2015. That is at what's called the sort of bleeding edge of technology. That was like really early blockchain, and that was incredibly expensive. So I think there is from my side of things, I see that it's much harder at the moment to raise capital for startups, and they are wanting returns much quicker, which is really, really hard in our current situation because there's a lot of startups working in the same sort of fields. I think COVID in one sense allowed a bit of a reset. I think some companies that possibly were on the point of taking off failed, unfortunately, because when COVID first happened, a lot of people, the old term, shut their checkbook and decided not to invest. But I also think that COVID allowed a sort of a reset where everyone sort of was staying in their caves and built amazing things and started to think about music and music usage in a different way. So I think that's why you have the virtual side of things, which was already growing anyway, coming on a bit. So I don't necessarily think it was a really bad thing. I think some innovation came out of it, but I do feel that we are still in a period where one of the reasons why investment is still so problematic is because of COVID and things related to COVID. Just the quantity of music and the propensity of metadata. So the panel we were just talking about was around metadata, and although metadata is probably the most unsexy thing in the whole music industry, it's fundamentally the most important, because if you don't get metadata right, number one, you don't get paid, so therefore you can't be an artist, and number two, you don't get found. And I think that's the biggest change that I've seen. Yesterday we saw a great presentation from Helena from Luminate, where she's talking about 112,000 ISRCs being created every day, and the dial is only going one way in the amount of music being created, but also the amount of music not being listened to. And so metadata is super important, that you get that right from an artist perspective and also from a label perspective, and all the way down the chain through to the PRO, to actually get you paid, because it's long enough from the moment you actually technically get a sale till you get paid anyway. It could be 6 months. So there's a lot of areas that need to be improved. But I think, yeah, that's a big change that I've seen. And I also think the amount of collaborators that are creating tracks. You would think that as we move to a short form world where actually technically the track is getting shorter in length, with the sort of explosion of TikTok and so on, you're getting less collaborators. I would say you're actually getting more collaborators, and actually making sure that they are all fairly paid and actually can exist as an artist is really, really a conundrum for the industry. And I can only see, the average is now 120,000 tracks a day. I can only see that getting more and more as we go on. I think, you know, the buzzword, as you've probably had from all your other interviews around AI, I think AI will be the pill that fixes some of these issues, purely because you've just got so much data. You will never employ 500, most companies will never employ 500 musicologists to sit in a room and actually go through it, because it's not worth their while fundamentally. That's the blunt answer. Where AI can help out, or machine learning as it really is that it'll give you that baseline to understand what you actually have. And I think in a world where we're now moving, where large catalogues are changing hands and being shared, and some artists are selling their catalogues, it allows you to actually be able to really define what you have, because that is so important when you then want to actually use it. And so few companies have actually done that up to now. So I think that's where I see there being a real change. And you know, we talked about this in our panel with some of our other partners on the panel, around how that can really make a real marked improvement in the business. But I don't think it's going to be overnight, and I don't think it'll actually ever be finished, because, you know, not to go too geeky on the subject, whenever you do modeling and you have a categorization in machine learning, you never sit still. It's just your latest, I think this is, you know, acoustic guitar, but what type of acoustic guitar? You know, it's always going to be that you add to that every time. So it'll be a never-ending process, but I think the technology will allow us to get closer to where we should have been many years ago.